They were a couple in it for the long haul.
They were living together for about 9 years.
They got along really well.
Until a terrible crime destroyed everything.
He's dead. He's dead.
They shot her and shot him.
There was blood everywhere. It's one of them things you don't unsee.
Were they targeted?
Someone actually broke into the house.
It's almost like a hazard of the life they live. It's a hazard of the job.
He feels like Halloween.
This is the life he chose.
Was it a scorned lover?
What you mean by it? Man, I knew what I was getting myself into.
Or was it someone nobody suspected?
This came out of nowhere.
It went sideways quick.
I didn't see it coming.
I was like, what?
What you're saying is not the truth. I know it and you know it.
January 30th, 2018. It's a Tuesday afternoon in Cambridge, Maryland, a town of 13,000 along the Chesapeake Bay.
It's a very small town, very rural.
Hunting and fishing is a huge thing.
The sleepy seaside community is also steeped in history.
This is literally where Harriet Tubman helped slaves to freedom through the Underground Railroad.
But today, there will be no rescue for one Cambridge resident.
Dorchester County 911, what's the emergency?
He's dead. He's dead.
Okay, who's dead?
My boyfriend.
The caller identifies herself as 39-year-old Lasagna Sargent.
Miss Sargent appeared to be in a great deal of pain.
Have you been shot also? What is your...
Yes.
Okay, where you been shot at, ma'am?
In the chest.
In the chest?
The operator immediately dispatches first responders to the address and attempts to determine what they're walking into.
You know where the suspects are?
Yeah.
You do not know?
Yeah.
Within minutes, the scene is flooded with patrol cars.
When the call came out for shots fired with victims, it's all hands on deck.
With no idea if the shooter is still in the house, the officers approach with caution.
We arrive going in completely blind, so we don't know what to expect.
Cambridge police! Down, something down. Something down there.
We would discover Miss Sargent pretty much laying in a pool of her blood on the first floor of the residence, obviously in a lot of pain.
Ma'am, is there anyone else in the house? You don't know? Do you know who did this to you?
Miss Sargent was lying in the floor, so I made my way upstairs where we were advised that there was a male subject who had been shot as well.
Oh, yeah, one on the bed. Second victim up there.
It's Lasagna's boyfriend, 35-year-old Sherrod Mack.
I don't have no pulse or nothing on him. Ain't breathing.
New York native Sherrod Mack possessed a large and loving heart.
Even when he was a little baby, all his photos, he's always laughing or smiling.
He was just a loving kid. Some kids grow up and their attitude change, but that wasn't the case with him. He never changed.
All right.
He was very kind-hearted. He always gave instead of trying to gain.
Everyone liked being around him. If I needed anything, honestly, he would be there for me. His sisters could call him up anytime to talk to him, and he was there for them. He was just this loving son and this big brother that we just adored.
Sherrod was so awesome. He's like the family clown. He always made you laugh. I mean, not just laugh, but really belly laugh.
But as close as he was with his family, in 2008, 25-year-old Sherrod decided he needed a change of pace and moved south to Maryland.
I come home from work one day and he had his bag packed and said he was going to Maryland. I tried to get him to stay, but his mind was made up.
He wanted something different. He had friends in Cambridge, so he made the decision to try it out.
He would come back to visit often, but he did really truly enjoy living down there.
Not long after relocating, he found love with a woman named Lasagna Sargent.
They were introduced by a mutual friend, and they just hit it off instantly.
They got along really well. She was going to school to become a nurse.
Lasagna was employed at a assisted living manor located in Easton, Maryland, which is only approximately 15 to 20 minutes away from Cambridge.
It seemed like things were moving in a really good direction. They had bought a new house. They were living together.
And before long, Lasagna had become part of the family.
I truly liked Sonia. We talked often over the phone, and she would keep me up to date pretty much what was going on. And I was really proud of her when she graduated and became a nurse and was going on to bigger and better things.
So it was no surprise that after 9 years, the couple was still going strong.
They were growing and building together, and things seemed stable, steady.
But now, first responders have just pronounced Sherrod dead, and Lasagna is clinging to life.
Miss Sargent had a gunshot wound to her chest.
Just lay as still as you can, ma'am, okay? EMS will be here in a minute.
And as they wait, officers at the scene suspect they may already know what happened.
They already know Sherrod and his history.
I've been dealing with him ever since I've been here.
The victim was the big-time weed dealer.
He deals like pounds of weed.
So the first thing that they would think is this is related to drugs.
Hey, beautiful.
Lasagna Sargent and Sherrod Mack had built a happy life together.
They were together for about 9 years. They were growing and building together and in a really happy place.
But what appears to be a horrific attack has left Sherrod dead and Lasagna gravely injured.
When the police arrive, she's conscious, but she has what appears to be a gunshot wound to the chest.
Once police clear the scene, medical personnel rush to Lasagna's aid.
All right, sweetheart. We're just gonna roll you, honey. Oh, there it is. There it is. All right.
When you looked at Miss Sargent, you would see a gunshot wound around the heart area, as well as in her back. So it wasn't clear at the time whether she was shot twice, or if this was an entry wound and an exit wound from the same bullet.
I know.
They're rushing to get her treatment and get help.
I'm ready.
Come on, we're ready.
Once loaded into the ambulance, a detective with the Cambridge Police Department rides with Lasagna.
Detective Phillips accompanied her in an effort to get what we would call a dying declaration, where if she was going to die, which we believed that there was certainly a very large potential that she would, that we would have her tell us who did this.
Lasagna.
But it proves difficult to get any useful information from the gravely injured woman.
I was crammed in the back of the ambulance with other personnel, medical personnel. Miss Sargent's obviously back there in a great deal of pain. They're asking her questions. I'm trying to get answers to questions myself. They're hooking her up to machines. The ambulance is rolling down the street. Everybody in the back of the ambulance is just getting tossed around as well. So it was a very chaotic scene.
They got to shock trauma. She was rushed into surgery.
While doctors fight to save Lasagna, investigators at the crime scene try to piece together what happened.
Do you see where he shot at? In a year.
Sherrod had been shot twice in the head.
He was laying on his back in the bed with his head kind of up against the pillows.
There was blood everywhere.
But it appears to police that the victim has been dead for some time.
Blood's dry on his arm. He's cold. He's been here for a while.
The question was how long, and we needed to account for that.
While police had found Lasagna downstairs, investigators believe she had been shot while lying beside Sherrod. Police also discover a gun next to him in the bed.
It was an automatic. It was a .40 caliber.
We did not know who the gun belonged to or how it got there.
However, investigators do suspect it was the weapon used in the shooting.
There was 3 .40 caliber shell casings that were located inside the bedroom.
That's a match for the gun in the bed and potentially the number of gunshot wounds that Sherrod and Lasagna suffered.
And nearby, they find what may have been the killer's true target: an open safe.
I remember there being a safe that had been opened and was empty.
Initially, you think, okay, well, he's been robbed.
And while police saw no signs of forced entry, the killer may not have needed to break in.
The first responding officers, there was literally no signs of forced entry. The door was unlocked. They opened it. Nothing appeared out of the ordinary.
The back door was slightly cracked open.
And knowing who their victim is, police suspect the murder was likely drug-related.
I've been dealing with him ever since I've been here.
So he feels like pounds of weed.
Working in the area as long as what I did see Sherrod from time to time, and he was never really an issue. He just had his thing that he did.
In my experience, the most violence is over marijuana. That's the biggest market. That's a moneymaker.
Before chasing down their hunch, detectives begin talking to the worried neighbors who'd gathered outside.
It's really a beautiful development. Newer townhomes. I don't recall there ever being a violent felony occurring in that area. So it was highly unusual, this crime in particular, where it took place.
They were canvassing the neighborhood and asking around and just to get information, just to see if someone saw something or heard anything the day that Sherrod was killed.
Have you been home all day? You hear any gunshots?
I remember that being negative for the most part.
However, a few neighbors did report hearing something that sounded like a single gunshot shortly before Lasagna made the 911 call.
After learning what they could from the scene, detectives return to the station and contact Sherrod's family in New York.
One of the sergeants that was on at the scene told us what happened. That's how I found out.
They were devastated that Mr. Mack was killed in the manner that he was killed in.
I couldn't comprehend it. It was like unbelievable.
Although Sherrod's mother also suspects it had something to do with her son's lifestyle.
He hustled. I had encouraged him to do other things with his life. He could do so much more, but this is the life he chose. I thought it was all connected, that somebody came in and did that.
Because according to Ms. Mack, this wouldn't be the first time Sherrod had been targeted.
Sherrod and Lasagna were the victims of a home invasion a week prior to this incident happening.
What all did he tell you on that?
That someone came in, two guys came in the house with hoodies on.
It was 2 black males with masks, guns.
And they came in from a downstairs window that was left open.
They ended up stealing quite a bit of money and drugs as well.
They basically robbed him of his money and his cell phone. They took Sonia's laptop.
As the lead investigator, I was thinking, okay, well, maybe this was another home invasion. They came back this time and Sherrod ended up dying and Lasagna was shot as well.
But what Sherrod's mother says next could take the investigation in an entirely new direction.
She put us on to Kimberly Johnson.
According to Sherrod's mom, Kimberly was the woman that her son had been seeing on the side.
Was this a jealousy situation?
Rather than drugs and money, was Sherrod's murder a scorned lover's revenge?
Detectives investigating the shooting that left Sherrod Mack dead and his girlfriend LaSonia Sargent in critical condition have just learned that the couple's relationship wasn't perfect.
His mother revealed that Sherrod was seeing another woman on the side.
He wasn't doing what he should have been doing. And I told her I would help, but that's how I felt about her. I really loved Zoe.
The new information raises the possibility that the shootings weren't drug-related.
Investigations can change at the drop of a hat, and it's almost whiplash.
You have to go where the evidence takes you. Until you know what happened, you don't cancel out anything. You know, everybody is a suspect.
The only eyewitness that can identify the shooter has just been rolled out of surgery.
Eventually, she came out of surgery and came to at some point, was a little like loopy.
The bullet missed her heart by maybe an inch. She had a lacerated lung as well as a broken shoulder blade. But in terms of being near death and on death's door, I believe Miss Sargent was out of the woods at that point.
But LaSonia is still in no shape to talk. So detectives turn their attention to the other woman in Sherrod's life, Kimberly Johnson.
Police were still trying to get information about what was happening with Miss Sargent and her medical condition, but they were still working the case.
Kimberly had an intimate relationship with Mr. Mack for an extended period of time.
Could it have something to do with his murder?
I'm sure you know that you're here because of Sherrod.
During the interview, she appears quite upset about his death.
And she doesn't deny their relationship.
I met Sherrod through my homegirl. We started off as friends, but eventually we started, dealing with each other on a dating level. And he's always had a girlfriend.
Kimberly appreciated the relationship that she was able to have with Mr. Mack and whatever role that was.
I knew what I was getting myself into, so it wasn't a lot to really argue about because it was like, you signed up for this.
Kimberly seemed to be okay with the arrangement. For the nature of the relationship they had, she did not seem bitter.
Yeah, overall good relationship.
Overall good.
Kimberly also claims that she had no real issues with LaSonia.
She's known for maybe 2 years, maybe. Me and her have spoken.
You guys have already spoken?
Stuff
Okay.
like that. So we know each other very well.
Kimberly seemed to respect the structure of the relationships as they were.
Although she admitted that she and LaSonia weren't always friendly.
The last time I spoke to her, it was just arguments. Like, back and forth.
But nothing crazy over the last, nothing spiked or any aggression or anything like that over the last couple of weeks.
She was very upfront about everything and outright denied having anything to do with Sherrod's murder.
But Kimberly claims she's heard rumors about who was behind the murder.
Supposedly out-of-town people.
She then goes on to tell detectives about the home invasion and robbery Sherrod's mother mentioned.
2 guys came to his house and tried to rob him or took some money or something from him that night.
Do you remember what day that was?
That was 2 Sundays ago.
Kimberly said that home invasion terrified Mr. Mack. It made him paranoid. It was because of that he started sleeping with a gun. She could not believe that with all the paranoia that he had, that he would ever let his guard down.
Which, if she was telling the truth, could explain why they found a gun in the bed with Sherrod.
But when detectives ask if Sherrod had any idea who had robbed him, Kimberly says no.
He said that he didn't recognize the people's voices at all.
Then just as detectives are wrapping up the interview, Kimberly adds another wrinkle to the investigation.
He was actually in another relationship with someone else that she knew about.
He has a baby on the way by another woman.
This could turn this whole investigation around.
Do you have any idea why I would want to talk to you?
Not much of our relationship. I am pregnant with his daughter.
Detectives investigating Sherrod Mack's murder have just learned from his lover, Kimberly Johnson, that there was a third woman in his life.
This mistress was actually currently pregnant with his child.
Her name is Tasha Wilkins.
At this point, detectives aren't sure what to think. With the baby on the way, is Tasha unwilling to stay on the sidelines, or is Kimberly angry because Sherrod had someone new?
When a detective sits down with Tasha that afternoon, she doesn't deny that she's carrying Sherrod's child.
Do you have any idea why I would want to talk to you?
Because of our relationship, I am pregnant with his daughter.
They knew it was a girl, and they had actually did a DNA test. So he knew for sure that the baby was his.
And while Tasha admits to knowing about Lasagna, she insists she had no reason to be jealous.
Well, it was on the outs. It was on the outs before me. It definitely was more so on the outs after this baby situation came.
In fact, Tasha claimed that Sherrod was planning on moving in with her.
It became clear when talking with her, the one thing that he always wanted was a child.
This was his first kid, so he was really excited about the baby.
She actually told us the day of the incident, she and him were supposed to go sign a lease on an apartment together.
But then when I didn't get, the regular good morning text of how you doing, how you feeling, whatever. So he was up so early, maybe he's asleep. I was just looking forward to hearing from him in the afternoon.
However, Tasha says that when she hadn't heard from Sherrod by that afternoon, she started to worry.
Tasha said that Sherrod seemed preoccupied with something on Monday evening, less than 24 hours before the murder.
He was upset about something. He really didn't get into detail, but he just said that he was going to call me, and he didn't.
Tasha says she had sent him a follow-up text later that night.
Said, you okay? You never called. He was like, yeah, I'm at the gas station. I just got a lot on my mind. And I think I might have asked him what was going on, or did it have anything to do with me?
She says that he responded no.
They just said no.
He actually said hell no.
So the detectives needed to know what was it that Sherrod had on his mind that night.
Maybe he was scared of another home invasion.
There may be a way to find out. Now in recovery, Lasagna is finally able to speak with detectives.
We all went, shh, thank God, because we needed that interview.
As soon as they hear that Lasagna is awake, detectives head to the hospital to get a statement.
I'm the investigator in the case. I know you're sure something.
We only had a tape recorder, and he asked her if she was willing to talk to him, and she said she was.
Miss Sargent, can you just basically, start from the top, what happened?
He came in.
Now, who came in?
There was 2 or 3 guys.
2 or 3 guys.
They were looking for drugs and money.
That was a week ago?
Maybe.
Lasagna tells detectives that the night of the murder started much the same as the previous home invasion.
You wake up.
To them. Like one that got to my head.
Sonia thought it was the same people that came back and, some people that couldn't finish the job.
They were wearing ski masks so that she didn't get a good look at their faces.
Was it at night? Was it in the morning?
It was like in the wee hours in the morning.
It was very early, and she said it was dark out when this took place.
They came in with like a black gun.
Okay.
And then he took the gun that he had on the dresser.
Lasagna says the intruders forced her out of bed at gunpoint.
So then what happened next?
And they was like, even though you know where it's at, you know where it's at.
She says they ordered her to take them to the drugs.
They brought her downstairs to the living room area.
One of them was still upstairs, and then I heard a gunshot.
Lasagna says that that's when she realized that Sherrod was dead.
I know he gone. I kept telling him we need to go. From the first incident, we need to go.
But when detectives ask Lasagna what happened next, she suddenly shuts down.
You tell us. Trust me, it's nothing we ain't never heard before. I promise. It's nothing we ain't never heard before.
Serious.
Say what?
buried me.
And when it was over, LaSonia says they brought her back upstairs to the bedroom.
They shoot me. I'm just thinking I'm dead. I'm gone.
Apparently, so did the intruders, who LaSonia said left soon after.
What happened next? I mean, other than what you were thinking, do you remember what you did?
I lay there and watch the ride. I get real close to him. Like, okay, we're just gonna die together.
LaSonia says that she doesn't know how much time passed, only that it was daylight when she woke.
That's when I know, like, I'm not dead.
So, called
911.
And then she had to crawl downstairs to her cell phone to call 911.
LaSonia's story appears to fit the evidence at the scene.
If LaSonia was raped, shot, and then left unconscious for several hours, that could be why Sherrod's blood was dry at the time he was found.
As the lead investigator, I was thinking this was another home invasion.
However, LaSonia's story also offers detectives a chance to identify the intruders.
Because of the nature of the allegation, certain protocols go into effect.
She says they gang raped her. She's, got these injuries. They're doing a rape kit on her.
Until the results come back, detectives are no closer to identifying Sherrod's killer. But then a witness comes forward with a possible tip.
A lot of people had really good relationships with Mr. Mack.
This particular man knew Sherrod from around town.
He tells police he'd seen Sherrod at a local convenience store the night before the murder.
This matches what Sherrod had told Tasha about being at a gas station.
I talked to him, I spoke to him, man. He looked like he got a white car with the dark tinted windows on it.
He had never seen that car around before, but thought it might have had New York tags.
Did you see who was in the car with him?
The lady was pursuing us for this video.
Acting on the tip, detectives request surveillance footage from the convenience store. The video yields some helpful information.
They do see Sherrod with someone in a white car, but they're unable to read the tags.
Hoping the car might return to the market, detectives scan through the tape and make a surprising discovery.
Around 9 o'clock, 9:15 in the morning of the shooting, you can see Miss Sargent heading into the market and buying a pack of cigarettes.
This is, of course, several hours after intruders had supposedly broken into the house.
She's obviously not shot at this point, so we have serious questions.
Investigating the murder of Sherrod Mack and shooting of LaSonia Sargent have just found evidence that suggests a shocking alternative to her home invasion story.
Detectives have just found surveillance footage of LaSonia at a local convenience store, unharmed, several hours after the deadly break-in allegedly occurred.
Maybe Miss Sargent isn't the victim that she wanted to portray. Maybe she was involved in this, and maybe she's somebody that should be considered more seriously for what happened.
But if that was the case, how did she end up shot?
A possible answer begins to emerge when LaSonia's supervisor at the assisted living facility reaches out to detectives.
Detective Jason.
We were able to determine after speaking with the employer, LaSonia was, at first when she was hired, she was a very good employee. She was a hard worker.
But according to her supervisor, that had eventually started to change.
Medication started becoming missing.
LaSonia was pocketing her patients' painkillers.
She had some sort of pill addiction or narcotic addiction.
People use substances to numb themselves from having to even deal with life, deal with the realities of whatever that pain is that they are feeling deep down inside.
But in LaSonia's case, it only made her problems worse.
She was eventually terminated.
She had actually been fired one day before this event.
And on the day of the shooting, her supervisor says she received an eerie voicemail from LaSonia.
It seemed very accusatory. It more or less says to the supervisor that you don't know what people are dealing with. You don't know what kind of circumstances that they have in their life.
It was along the lines of, this is all your fault.
And Lasagna left this message for her supervisor approximately 3 hours before she called 911.
Lasagna had already lost Sherrod to another woman. Now her job too? Her message to her boss made it seem like she felt she had nothing left.
Maybe this was a murder-suicide.
After talking to her supervisor, detectives return to the hospital and confront Lasagna with what they know.
He just went into her, said, "You did it, didn't you?"
This whole thing has come to a head, but there's only really one way that this thing happened.
He points to the loss of the relationship, her job, and the pregnancy as part of her motive.
I know that puts you in a bad frame of mind.
But Lasagna insists that detectives have it all wrong.
I knew of her and of him supposedly getting her pregnant.
She passed it off like she was well aware of that. That was old news.
And we had gotten over it and gotten past it and was working out the issues.
So you're saying that you did not know that he was getting ready to leave?
I did not know nothing about that because he wouldn't leave me. He kept saying he didn't want to leave me.
That's what Lasagna claims. But detectives refuse to back down.
Did you shoot him?
No, sir, I did not.
You're sure?
I'm positive.
You stick to what you're saying. With the evidence that we got, there is no way that anybody's going to believe that. What you're saying is not the truth. I know it and you know it.
I'm done.
Lasagna may be done, but detectives aren't.
I've also got a DNA search warrant for your DNA I'm going to get right now.
They want to see if Lasagna's DNA is found on the gun that was in the bed with Sherrod.
We're going to compare that. And, you know, there's going to be a lot of things forthcoming.
She read that thing over like a fine-tooth comb and was being very reluctant to give up her DNA at that point because she knew the jig was up. We knew it was her.
But before filing formal charges against her, they get even more damning evidence.
Sherrod's family contacts detectives with something that they found after the police turned the crime scene over to them.
I was actually given a cordless phone that had like a built-in voicemail.
There were 11 voicemails saved on the phone from Lasagna.
And there was one message, and I'll never forget it.
Keep on playing games with me if you want. Keep on thinking everything is a joke. You can try. It's not something, you know.
I don't believe that there were any serious incidents recorded in our database at the department that would suggest something like this happening in that area. You will, as an officer, go to many domestic homes 5 times a week, and you can just tell that something serious could happen at any moment. This was not one of those cases.
This is not your typical homicide. All new Deadly Case Files, Monday at 10, only on TV One.
Detectives investigating Sherrod Mack's murder have just discovered almost a dozen angry messages his girlfriend Lasagna Sargent left on his voicemail in the weeks leading up to his death.
She had told police that their relationship was on a mend, but the messages tell a different story.
Don't hang the phone up on me when I'm talking, Sherrod. It's rude and you're a jerk. I just wanted to know what the hell we even together for. Like, why? Why are we still together? Ain't there. Like, we just sleep in the same house. What the hell are we together for?
Taken together, the messages paint a picture of someone potentially capable of a murder-suicide.
Investigators believe they had more than enough at the time to actually charge Miss Sargent for the murder of Mr. Mack.
And when Lasagna is released from the hospital, detectives are waiting.
Miss Sargent was taken from the hospital and brought to the police department where she would finally be charged with the murder of Mr. Mack.
News of Lasagna's arrest brings mixed emotions for Sherrod's family.
I didn't want to believe it. I'm like, why would she shoot herself? I don't believe that. Who would shoot themselves in the chest?
I couldn't believe she would have done that. It's just...
When LaSonya goes to trial on August 20th, 2018, prosecutors contend that despite her story about the armed intruders, she was the only shooter in the house that night.
There were strong factors in her decision to take a life.
From the minute that Sherrod had gotten Tasha pregnant, everything started to spiral out of control.
She had lost her job.
Sherrod was moving out.
Things weren't going her way at all.
And sometime during that night of January 29th, LaSonya had reached a fatal decision.
What she came to is, if I can't have you, then nobody can have you.
Based on the evidence, the prosecutors are able to reconstruct what happened next.
She got up early in the morning and my son was asleep. He was asleep when it happened.
While Sherrod slept, she took the gun he kept by the bedside for protection.
She shot Mr. Mack twice in the head.
He had been shot in his ear twice, or in his ear and then a little bit above it, like almost like you would shoot somebody in the ear, and then as the gun went off, you didn't expect the recoil and you shot again, and it went a little bit above it.
I'm not sure if Miss Sargent had ever shot a gun before.
Then, with Sherrod dead, LaSonya plotted her next move.
In the early hours of the morning, she had left the house, got into her car, drove to the quick shop where she purchased some cigarettes.
They had videotapes of her going on about her day.
Prosecutors believe she had intended for it to be her last.
She called her boss and left a message that sounded suspiciously like a suicide note.
Then she went back upstairs, laid down in the bed next to Sherrod, and put the gun to her chest.
It was very intentional, there's no doubt about it. She has limited medical expertise. She could shoot herself and not put herself in the dire straits that she put herself in.
But her suicide attempt failed.
The gun jammed because she held the gun too close to her.
Had she not caused that misfire, she likely would have been able to shoot herself again. And clearing a misfire after getting shot near the heart, after lacerating your lung, that's a tall task.
So LaSonya came to another decision.
It was, I'm not dying fast enough. So she was left with little options at that point.
So at that point, I guess she decided that she would try to live.
She was in pain, and so she had to crawl downstairs to her cell phone and called 911 because it hurt.
Evidence from the scene helps to bolster the prosecution's timeline of events.
Sherrod's blood was dry when he was found because he was shot many hours before LaSonya. And neighbors only heard one gunshot shortly before the 911 call because that was when LaSonya shot herself.
Forensics also proved LaSonya was the shooter.
Not only was Ms. Sargent's DNA on the trigger of the gun that was left on the bed, but also her DNA was on the magazine.
And ballistics matched the shell casings found at the scene to Sherrod's gun.
The prosecution also has proof that LaSonya's alleged rape never happened.
From the rape kit, there was semen found inside of Miss Sargent, but it was Mr. Mack's. So the belief is that around the time of the shooting, maybe the day prior, she potentially had sex with Mr. Mack. But no other semen, no other sources found on Miss Sargent, and no other evidence to suggest that she was violently and brutally raped the way that she described.
When it's the defense's turn, LaSonya sticks with her original story.
She said that it was a home invasion, and she stuck with that story throughout the trial. She never wavered from that story.
But it's a story the jury finds hard to believe.
And that jury came back with a guilty verdict.
The judge, he made a point to let me know that he's gonna make sure she never get out. He gave her a life sentence plus another 20 years, and that was a sense of relief.
She will never see the light of day again. She will die in prison. And that was satisfying to the state.
But even if LaSonya is where she belongs, nothing can undo the horrible damage she's done.
She think that she only destroyed my nephew's life, but she destroyed a lot of people's lives, especially of all his little babies.
I really do feel bad for the child.
Sonia is where she belongs. Nothing can undo the horrible damage she's done.
She think that she only destroyed my nephew's life, but she destroyed a lot of people's lives, especially of all his little babies.
I really do feel bad for the child in this situation who never got the opportunity to meet her father.
She only gonna know it. We can tell her the stories we can tell her.
And Sherrod's family still struggles to fathom what could have motivated LaSonia to take things so far.
Why she had to kill him. He didn't deserve what happened to him.
It made no sense. It would have been better to walk away.
It's a lesson his family hopes others will take from this tragedy.
If the relationship is not working, it's best to separate.
People look at tragedies like this and they want to know, well, how did this happen? Well, it happened over a long period of time. Things degraded and they got worse and worse. The worst tragedies that we see around us are rarely something that happens spontaneous. There are clues, there are indicators.
If you're not happy, just leave. Don't drag it out. Just get out of that situation before things could take a wrong turn.